The reason that I, that I'm going to put a lot of thought into this particular thing and some of the related shootings and stuff is exactly because I don't know what to think of them. I don't know what to think of what these people... I certainly would like to understand what's going on in their heads. I'd love to be able to go interview this guy and sit down with him. It does frighten me a little bit that they've arrested him for illegal possession of a firearm. Now, in his case, I would bet that they're not arresting him for illegal possession of a firearm, because I'm sure in Pennsylvania the laws aren't much different than anywhere else in the United States. There's no law saying you can't possess a firearm unless... But then again, there's all kinds of local laws, right? Because like the police, we talk about, oh, Hillary's going to take away your guns, right? Well, the police have already done that to a certain extent. They've made it illegal for you to carry one in the open. I mean, if you're here in Lexington, you can't walk around with a gun on your belt unless you get a license from them, okay? And they've made it illegal for you to carry one concealed, because you have to get a license from them. And honestly, if I get pulled over or something, the last thing I want is for the cop to know I have a gun, right? Because then immediately he's going to be trigger happy. So I don't want him to think that. I don't want him to look at my license number or after he gets my name and see conceal and carry license. Because then he's going to be walking around with his hand on his gun just in case I have that gun with me, right? I mean, that's scary. And that's unfair. That's why I've never gone for a conceal and carry license. I don't want it. I don't want it to be part of, and that's why it makes me sick that they put this terroristic threatening, because now every time something happens, because invariably you have to deal with the cops. I mean, I've already gotten to the point where I don't want to call the cops, and be involved. So I don't want to call on my neighbor. They're fighting, I hear shouting, I heard a bang. Could have been a gun. I don't want to call, right? Because, you know, now with cell phones, they're going to know, right? Where you are, who you are. With caller ID, they're going to know who you are, whose phone it was. Who needs it, right? And I can't tell you how many times I have called the cops and ended up being like the suspect. Like they're like, who are you? What are you calling? You know. And the really crazy part of that is that if you well, I lost my train of thought, but it was crazy. It's crazy stuff. It's all crazy stuff whenever you're talking about dealing with situations, right? Okay, so anyway, in this situation, we'll listen to what they talk about here, but it strikes me as strange that there's, I mean, they didn't say anything about why the gun he has is illegal. Now, as far as I'm concerned, if you're a Nazi, okay, that just cracks me up how any American could be a Nazi. I grew up all my life being told that, you know, we fought a bloody war to defeat the Nazis. How an American can be a Nazi. But they are, basically. If you're a Nazi, I do think that the cops should be really looking at you. Because it's just so crazy, right? Maybe psychological. But then again, I don't want anybody looking at me. I talk about all kinds of weird shit because I'm a journalist. Because that's what I'm interested in. And I like to study it. I love psychology, even though I don't like the way psychologists do it. I think they're kind of inept and stupid sometimes. I don't think they know what they're doing. I don't think they understand people at all a lot of the time. So anyway, so I get into this stuff. I want to understand. I certainly want to understand anything that gets people killed, because I'd like to help. And I've proved over and over again, if you watch my shows, that I do have an insight. I am able to see things other people don't. For instance, I did a story just tonight. One of my fellow journalists, Kyle Klinsky, covered a story. Actually, it was about a lady who had a flag painted on the side of her restaurant, and Antifa protesters threw red paint at it. They didn't like it. But he missed the whole point of it. So I did a piece. And actually it'll probably be right after this piece, because it's in that order. So so that's why I do my journalism, because I think, you may be sitting there right now going, what the fuck's he talking about? Well, I'm sorry if you don't have the insight yourself to see that I have some insight, to see that I'm making points that other people don't make that are important. And that's what counts, right? How do you get how do you take the high road? How do you get the points that count out there and into circulation if you don't listen? And how do you learn? If you don't listen to people who've got, a little better, for some reason, they're a little better at seeing what matters, So anyway, and all I can say to those people is, well, if you're bored and you think I'm just rambling, then, go get you another cup of coffee and do whatever you want to do. Don't listen to my program. But to the rest of you, I want you to know you're getting smarter. Every time you watch my show, you're learning things that you won't learn anywhere else. You won't learn it from Kyle, you won't learn it from Mike, you won't learn it from Democracy Now! What's her name? None of them. A lot of times they tell me things that I don't know. So you'll get that. You'll get that from other places. And, if all you watch is CNN, Fox, and CNBC, and MSNBC, and that stuff, you're not going to get anything. Because you're not going to understand fundamentally important things about what's going on. So yes, I strongly suggest that you watch my show and not consider it a waste of time. So the reason I'm going to cover this or research this and really put a lot of thought into it is because I don't understand it. I really don't. And I've been, it's like everything else that I'm interested in. I've been watching this shit forever. And I get to that point with just about everything. with Syria, I got to that point. Here I am, I've spent hours, days, months, years understanding Syria. I mean, literally. I grew up in Lebanon. I was very aware that Damascus was, I lived right off the Damascus Road. I could get on it. We used to go about 3/4 of the way to Damascus, but we'd never crossed the border because we didn't have any reason to. Anyway, so I spent years studying Syria and the lead up and Hafez al-Assad and all the stuff, the Ba'athist movement, how the Ba'athist movement, how it ties in with, of course, there's the Ba'athists in Iraq and the PLO. Were very, very much Ba'athists. Okay, so I could never figure out Syria, though, the civil war. I mean, I knew that it started because just typical average the poorer people, the farmers and everything in Syria were fed up with the oppression, with the tyranny that was going on. That still is going on, of course, even worse than ever. But I couldn't quite wrap my mind around what was going on. Well, I'm at that point now. Now, mind you, Syria, not only did I wrap my mind around it, but I know about Syria things that you would never think of or never hear on the TV, in the regular media. And I'm going to get to that same point with this stuff, because I don't understand quite what's going on. I can't quite wrap my mind around these people's heads, like this guy here.
Police have arrested a man who said the victims of last month's mass shooting at a Pittsburgh synagogue, deserved it. 30-year-old Jeffrey Clark was arrested last week on weapons charges and appeared in court yesterday.
Clark was friends with the alleged Pittsburgh.
Okay, so right there. Okay, he says that they deserve it. This is now, mind you, I'm admitting right up front that I don't understand what's going on with this guy. But I do understand people who feel like other people deserve whatever. To be gunned down by their best or by some online friend? No, I don't understand that. But to feel like I'm looking right now at all these cops, right? Look at them all tough and everything and all ready to kill somebody, and all after this, I guess they're going to arrest this guy. And as far as I can tell, he hasn't actually done anything. He may be a nasty piece of shit, and he may have been best friends with this guy online through this site. But, and I don't know all the details, right? Maybe on the site there's plenty of interactions with him where he does do stuff. But like with me, I didn't do anything and they arrested me. So of course that brings up the important point of what did this guy do? You know? Is it another case of them just being, because they're a bunch of assholes, man. They want to portray themselves as the big badasses who are saving us all. Servants, public servants. But man, I've seen so much of their public service. There's a huge problem here, and we're burning the candle at both ends. I mean, how do you reconcile their tyranny and this guy's tyranny, right? I mean, they're all a bunch of tyrants. So they say, you know, he says they deserved it. So he says that the guys killed. Well, what's he talking about? Is he mad because they killed his Jesus? You know, I'm not really sure. And you know, I think it's really irresponsible to report on it and not really be able to explain. You know, what does this guy hate these Jews for? And why do these people hate these Jews? Why do they hate them? I mean, I think they hate them. I don't really know, so I'll have to get into it. I mean, I think they hate them because they think that as a religion, they're somehow at odds with white America. I mean, they're white people, all of these Jews, right? I'm sure every single one of them that died was white. I mean, every once in a while you get a Sammy Davis Jr. or something like that. But you know, they're white, so it's not that. It's their religion. So what is that? Why do these? Because I don't really understand that. I mean, is it just because of some kind of animosity between like Nazis and Jews? I mean, I do know all about the history, going all the way back to, you know, Germany and before. But you know, when you go back that far and before Germany and go over to Europe, and you're talking about the hatred of Jews, it's kind of like the hatred of gypsies, right? It's like they were kind of a poor minority that managed to raise itself out of poverty and actually gain some kind of like wealth and everything. They always talk about all the money that was stolen from them by the Nazis, and you know, Jewish gold and everything. So, you know, is that where they're coming from? Is that why? I mean, why did the guy shoot a bunch of Jews in a synagogue? Why does he hate, and why does his group of people hate them so much? What did they do? What are they doing? What have they done? See, I dislike Zionists. So I find myself oddly connected to these people who hate Jews, because Zionists are Jews. They're a subset of Jews. And I don't hate them that much. I don't want to kill them or anything like that. I just really despise how they've upset the whole world with their little, oh, we gotta have Israel. You know? I mean, what the fuck, man? You fucked up the whole world because of your stupid religion, because of the stupid idea that you own the land that a whole bunch of Palestinians owned. And I watched when Christian Lebanese slaughtered 115,000 Palestinians. Watched. I stood there looking from a mountain. Actually, we were only 1,000 feet up, so it's not exactly in a mountain, but right on the side of a mountain looking down on Beirut, 6 miles away. Watched them just bomb the camps out of existence and then run over them with, you couldn't see the bulldozers and the tanks, but because there was too much smoke, lots of fire. And you know, I mean, so I'm a witness. I'm a witness to this stuff, and it makes me just sick, and it makes me. And these weren't Jews, but really it's, you know, these are Palestinians who fled Israel with Israelis on their heels, obviously, run them off their out of their country into Lebanon, where they ended up in camps around the Beirut, near the Beirut, in between the Beirut airport and the city, Beirut. And, you know, we were in Babda, just up above it, looking down on it, and saw the whole thing. 1973. I think it was in May or March or something. Can't remember. And the newspapers don't even talk about it. It's one of the things that's, they managed to do it without, I don't know how they did it. Nobody knows. So anyway, so I find myself oddly, because I do support Palestine. And if I had my way, I would have all the, just like that reporter said, they all came from Europe or America or somewhere. Why don't they just go back? You know, and there's people who hear me say that and think, and say, well, wait a minute. These are the people who were victims of the Holocaust, and they want their own country. Yeah, but man, really? I mean, how many Palestinians have died? 1 million? I would bet at least 1 million. It's just, I don't know. I mean, that's a whole another one that was very hard to wrap my head around. Even though I lived it, saw it, I was a casualty of it. Little Palestinian kid hit me in my eye. I can't see hardly. Everything's real blurry out of my left eye, and the pupils stuck wide open. Anytime I'm under fluorescent lights, I start to get headaches after a while. I mean, yeah, that's not the same as getting shot and killed or something, but you know, a little Palestinian kid was angry and wanted to get a little bit of revenge, and he didn't even know who I was, but he knew that I was one of those foreigners living up in the mountains in Lebanon, and he was going to get a piece of the enemy. We're just, you know, I was, what, 12 or something, or 10 or 12 or something, I don't know, I'm not going to stop to figure it out. So, all these people, right, all these people, and this guy, so he's an American, and so that adds an odd twist to it for me.
Shooter Robert Bowers, and on social media, rather, using the networking site Gab, court documents say that Clark's 23-year-old brother, Edward, who also used that site, committed suicide in the hours after the shooting on October 27th. After media reports indicated that Gab would cooperate with federal investigators. Both brothers had attended the 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. Clark is...
Boy, that gets me, though, huh? Them Nazis in Charlottesville, that really gets under my skin. You know, Americans allowed to... I don't know, I mean... Am I the left-wing version of them? So, you know, because I believe in caring for people and stuff. So am I like, I don't know. I can't put it together. It's like I have an odd, connection to these people. They're like the total whack job versions of me. There's a lot in common. There's a lot in common, and I can see how that might frighten people, but I assure you, in my case, you don't have to worry. I'm not ever going to try to kill a whole bunch of white nationalists or anything like that. Why? Because I think these things work themselves out. And you know what the real reason is? Because even I have to dig deep to grab hold of this reason, but it is at the core of why I would never do anything evil. And that's because even if you're somehow doing it in defense of others or yourself, there's a taint to it. You know, what happens is, and people are putting me in jail for having thoughts of violence, but you know what? One of the reasons I'm not violent is because I actually picture myself doing it. Picture myself, here I've got the people I hate right in front of me, and I'm slicing and dicing, blowing up and killing everything. And do you know what the feeling I get is when I picture that in my mind? I'm in hell. I mean, where would you be if you were slaughtering the enemy? You're not in a good place. And I figure that that's what would happen if I were ever to actually get my revenge or whatever, what have you. My life would be forever altered, and I would no longer be the pure, clean, beautiful person that I am now, despite all of my malnormities. I mean, I suffer. I've been in pain. I've felt and seen awful things and everything, but somehow I've come through it clean. I mean, I'm like a what do you call it? I'm like a saint. I mean, I've never hurt anybody real bad, except for, well, never hurt anybody real bad, but I've hurt people in self-defense. They attacked me. I had to defend myself, but you know, and I put it all on one or two or three things, whatever. Going back, I remember I shot a bird, and I saw it laying there dying, and I thought, man, I used to play with my pellet rifle a lot, and we used to shoot lizards. And at some point, when I was quite young, I was like, man, why am I, just because everybody else does it, I'm doing it? Why am I killing things? Why, you know, I see it laying there dying. Well, what's the matter with me? Just because everybody else is doing it? Because when I grew up in Babda, Lebanon, there were a bunch of kids led by this one kid, actually. My friend Michelle Gribben's older brother. He kind of was the guy with the pellet rifle and teaching. And he ended up becoming a mercenary. Last time I heard about him, I was still in Lebanon. I heard that he was at like 16 or 17 years old. He's gone off to fight in Uganda or somewhere. Crazy shit, huh? So, at an early age, I was like, why would I do something like this? And so, the rest of it I just have to imagine, right? Because I've never, gone up to a guy who did something really horrible to somebody or something, or to me, and just unloaded a double-barrel shotgun into his chest, or something like that. I don't have to. I can think about it. And I just see myself as going from what I am now into a terrible, terrible place that you can never, ever leave. Or at least it would take several lifetimes, right? And I say to myself, wow, I can feel that. I can feel that. I can see it in my mind. I don't ever want to go to that place. I don't want to have to. Now, I'm not saying I wouldn't defend myself. You know, somebody comes into my house shooting a gun, looking for me to kill me. Yeah. You know, I will gladly unload on them. And when I think of that, I don't see that horrible place. That horrible place where you go when you commit a revenge killing of some kind or something like that. It's not a good place. I mean, I don't ever want to have to defend myself by killing somebody. But at the same time, it's not the same place. So that's, you know, that's a lot to do with why I would never do anything. Why I would never seek revenge, why I would not want to be in a war. Because a war is just us going somewhere and trying to get revenge. Or maybe not, and at some point it's not revenge anymore. I mean, Afghanistan, a couple months in there chasing the Taliban around and Osama bin Laden, okay. But after that, it's a bunch of bullshit. Same with Iraq, you know. We went in there, we got Saddam. Saddam was an awful person. I saw a video that Saddam made where he had his enemies come in while they were all sitting around at a table eating dinner, and at gunpoint they would force them to take a sword and shove it through them and walk around until they fell over and died. I don't have a problem with the United States taking out Saddam. I don't. He was a sick fuck. But, you know, after we got Usay and Kusay, or whatever their names were, and pretty much ran the Ba'ath Party into the ground, you know, within a couple of months after that, it was gratuitous violence. I mean, it was just awful. And nearly 1 million or more, maybe, Iraqis died. So, okay, well, I think I've made a lot of really good points here. I know I've pointed out things that I feel very strongly about. As far as this stuff, we're going to get into this. I'm definitely going to get into this. I'm going to be talking about this white nationalism with this kind of white supremacist, Aryan nation, all that kind of stuff. Because, you know, I think these people need a lot of help. I think that they're really angry. And I think the first step is understanding what they're angry about. Because very often, it's like with the PLO. You know, if you couldn't figure out what they were angry about, then of course all you would think about is how horrible they are. And, you know, I don't think most people are really horrible people. I think they've just got issues, you know. I mean, we need to get to these people and address their issues. And then we can say, well, they're just wacko, or maybe they do have an issue that needs to be addressed. So I'll be looking at this in that kind of, from that kind of point of view. I know it's, you know, more than anybody else, I agree. I think there's something seriously wrong with them. But before I just leave it at that, I'm not going to leave it at that. I'm going to look at what they're talking about. And God, that's a dangerous thing, right? Because people are going to say, oh, well, just before da-da-da, he was on Storm Watch or something like that. I know a few names of websites that they... I think I do. I mean, it's not like I hang out there. But I guess I'm gonna be, just until I can try and digest what's going on here. Because I really want to understand what's going on. I certainly am not gonna... There's nothing that they're gonna be able to tell me that's gonna turn me into one of them. You know, I'm not going to become a white supremacist or anything. I just have too much of a basis in reality. I mean, a basis in like compassion and companionship and friendship, and you know, I would never fall for, and I do know enough about that that, you know, I would never like be join their camp or whatever you want to call it. But it's going to be interesting looking into it. I think I'll look at that movie too. I can't even come close to thinking what it was, but it had the guy who played the Hulk in the first Hulk movie. And, oh, it was a scary movie, but I'm going to have to watch it again and look up how it relates to reality, because it was a very real movie. All about a white supremacist. He was a vicious motherfucker, man. Sounded a lot like this guy they're talking about.
Is charged with unlawful possession of a firearm and possessing high-capacity magazines. He faces up to 10 years in prison.
Okay, so high-capacity
Police
magazines are not illegal. Why is it illegal for him to own a firearm? I mean, I own guns. There's nothing illegal about it as far as I know. There's nothing illegal about high-capacity magazines. You can go into any gun store and buy them. You don't even have a waiting period or anything. The magazines, they just sell them. So I don't understand this. I think that they're just going after him. And this is what disturbs me in relation to me. Because they're using one law to convict me of something that I did that doesn't fall under. I didn't threaten anybody. I just discussed some things. So that's what they're doing now, is they're taking laws. It's like a doctor who, you know, takes a drug that's not for diabetes, but he gives it to his patient to see if it might help. Well, it's like they're doing that with laws. They're taking laws, you know, and they're able to put people in jail for longer and fine them more by basically misusing the laws. And I understand wanting to get certain people off the streets. I mean, some people are really dangerous. They really are. But man, you know, I'm just constantly drawn back to that line from Spider-Man. And it's not from the movie. It is in the movie, but it's from the